Hello, everyone. I am here to talk about the fifth studio album by Canadian pop star Shawn Mendes. It's titled Shawn, his second self-titled record. I think quite a few eyes might have rolled a little bit when they saw the name of the record because his 2018 album bears his name as well. And now it's sort of like a Britney Spears, Britney Jean, and we've got Britney. He's sort of clone of Britney Spears, having two self-titled albums. Except this doesn't have his middle name; it's just Shawn. This comes 4 years after his last album, Wonder. So he's been out of the public spotlight for quite a while. Apparently, he had to cancel his 2022 world tour for mental health reasons. He has even acknowledged that, his confidence in his own songwriting and who he is as a musician was really called into question over the last couple years. And he was dealing with some severe anxiety around that. And it sounds like this record was very much, him scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of motivation and clawing his way back out into creating his most honest and personal body of work yet, and also his most stripped back. This is his least pop-facing record. There's really only one radio single that's super up-tempo, and that's Why, which was one of the lead singles for the record, released in August. And my ears were definitely, my ears perked up hearing some of the snippets because a folksier, fireside record from Shawn, I think, is showing, a lot of evolution and a lot of interpersonal focus, which is something that a lot of people get to a stage where, their wild and early 20s are over, and now they're potentially experiencing a quarter life crisis. It appears Shawn certainly was. He is now 26 years old. And this album was born out of a lot of, personal anxieties and inner soul searching that he needed to work through. And so I'm going to touch on, the good, the bad. I mean, I was, again, very impressed. The first song I heard from it, which also was released with Why, is Isn't That Enough? And I think Isn't That Enough is my favorite on the record because I think it is a good blend of singer-songwriter with a pop sensibility. There's a jubilation to the chorus where he sort of is getting up on his feet and sounding a lot more kind of confident and sure of himself. And then there's this delicate wistfulness to the verses. And it brings to mind the kind of country leaning style of someone like James Taylor or even Crosby, Stills, and Nash in some of their earlier work. Now, a lot of people bring up John Mayer. I believe John Mayer was actually in conversation with Shawn for an interview earlier this year. John Mayer would be the closest approximation to the lane that I think Shawn Mendes is going into. And I don't necessarily think, if the shoe fits, go for it. John Mayer is certainly like, a competent musician who has some good songs. So I'm not necessarily going to fault Shawn for going in that direction. But I will say that there are some even more impressive, I think, folk male artists that he is evoking on this record. Like I said, there are some James Taylor vibes. There are some Crosby, Stills, and Nash vibes. He does cover a Leonard Cohen song, which also shows that inspiration. That is an exciting kind of evolution for him. I remember hearing Stitches back on, the radio when I worked in retail 10 years ago, and I don't want to say that this guy annoyed me, but there was just something about the plasticity of his music, particularly from his first record, that just bugged the hell out of me. I'm going to be completely honest with you. And to see him kind of come to where he is now sonically is pretty refreshing. This is a very introverted record. This is him sort of going into his, like Cabin in the Woods era, like not like as bad as when Justin Timberlake did it. I mean, this is at least competent and not completely corny. Even if some of the songs don't necessarily hit the mark, there's definitely an element of effort that I appreciate. And risk-taking, exploration, that I think I've seen a lot of critics talk about, some of the more up-tempo moments of the record being highlights, which I would disagree. I would say that Why might actually feel the most derivative. in that I feel like Sean's trying to make a pop radio song out of the kind of sonic catalog of inspiration that he's pulling from on this record. And I don't hate the song, but it definitely, I think, kind of doesn't capture the more but I'm an introspective kind of, I like the subtle kind of rich crisp guitar strings, and I think that going, harder with a pop country sound with a hitting drum line is not always my thing. Although I do think that, he harmonizes pretty well with himself. I'm pretty impressed by, the layering of vocals and some of the, I think, reaches that he takes in his falsetto. He's always had a pretty strong voice. I think that's one thing I think we all need to acknowledge, is that Shawn Mendes is a pretty good vocalist, for what he gives us. I think he could, even be stronger. And there are some moments and some turns of, where he's going with the melody that I like that he's having, that he's feeling confident in his vocal delivery. And I was seeing some critics say he doesn't sound confident, but I think there's a real at ease and calm to most of these stripped back acoustic songs, where you really feel like he's feeling his vocal ability, he knows what his voice is capable of, and he wants to explore that. And I think that there's so much emotion that comes through in his vocal. We open up with Slider songs, Who I Am, which sets the sonic palette, of the record. A lot of this is going to, be the kind of guitar vocal, maybe some faint backing vocals coming here and there. That's the sonic palette we're going to be working with. But it shows where he's at, a couple of years ago, like completely, unsure of where he wants to go professionally. And I think personally dealing with, I haven't followed, I was doing a little bit of research in lieu of this video because I felt like I might as well be a little more knowledgeable about Shawn's past, his dating history, his whirlwind romance with Camila Cabello, which apparently lasted from 2019 to 2021, but then rekindled briefly in 2023. And then in between there was some Sabrina Carpenter dating. I was really getting into I was like, I'm not interested in this. This is not at all something I'm checking for, because I don't really check for these artists in that way. But I was kind of like, wow, there's some juicy drama here. And especially if you listen to Sabrina Carpenter's latest record. And then I was looking at a BuzzFeed article, and I was kind of shook at the kind of direct hits that Sabrina was taking at Shawn, which, I mean, I have to read one of them for you if you're not aware, because I was like, if this is about Shawn, which we're like 90% it is, this is a pretty severe dig. You're so dumb and poetic, it's just what I fall for. I like the aesthetic, every self-help book, you've already read it. Cherry pick lines, they're words you invented. That's in Dumb and Poetic. And then gold star for highbrow manipulation, and love everyone is your favorite quotation. Try to come off like you're soft and well-spoken. Jack off to lyrics by Leonard Cohen. Oh, I mean, guess who has a Leonard Cohen cover on his album? Don't think you understand. Just because you talk like one doesn't make you a man. Whew. And in Sharpest Tool, Sabrina says, I know you're not the sharpest tool in the shed. We had sex. I met your best friend. Then a bird flies by and you forget. The tea is scalding. The tea is scalding. I'm sorry. I just had to interject that. It's messy. It's messy. Romance is messy. Apparently, Shawn was potentially cheating on Sabrina to go back with Camila. And now, of course, they're not together anymore, I think, at all. I think Camila and Shawn are fully done at this point, one would think. But who knows? Apparently, a bunch of these songs are referencing Camila, but possibly Sabrina as well. Because, he starts out the song by talking about, it's been this way since 17, which is when he and Camila first met. And they did that song together. I forgot that one song, that I Know What You Did Last Summer. In That'll Be the Day, Shawn mentions someone moving away, building a home with somebody he doesn't know, but there will always be undeniable love between he and the person. So presumably he's talking about Camila. It's not ever going to change. You can fight the truth till your face turns blue. This love is here to stay. So he's, pouring his heart on a sleeve like he often does. And he is truly smitten by her, and maybe is never going to fully get over her. On why, he drops that he was scared he was about to become a father, and he was realizing he was not at all ready. So I suppose that, someone had a pregnancy scare. Again, are we talking about Camila? Are we talking about Sabrina? Are we talking about someone else? I'll let anyone sleuthing out in the comments deduct that. That's the dream. He talks about not being able to moving on post his breakup, and not feeling like he is, but feeling like he is a shadow of himself, and wishing that he could go to this wedding with this person by his side. I will say that's the dream. I think has, as far as one of the more up-tempo songs, it's probably one of my favorites. It just rolls by like an autumn breeze with the guitar. Really like the melody. Nobody Knows, one of the most distinct country sounding songs on the record, but and it has a bit of a bandstand feel because it's got that bluesy vibe, and it has some great falsetto shrieks. I will say I was impressed. I was impressed by some of the sort of Rolling Stones-esque vocal dynamics he was pulling. But Isn't That Enough is, like I said, the most bittersweet song because it's so warm and calm and soothing in the harmonizing of his vocal. In the chorus, sweet is the sun, warm is the rain, June is the month, free is the day. And then in the pre-chorus, we have a bit of a harmonica coming in. My hand's still shaking, my mind's still racing, my heart's still breaking in two. I'm still changing, my friends stay patient, my mother still calls for the news. And then he asks, isn't that enough? With a whistle outro. And I think that, I don't know, I feel like he is just tapped in the best on this one. Sonically, musically, and possibly lyrically as well. There's not a lot of lyric, but the lyrics that are there feel the most poetic and reflective. He's kind of escaped, the rat race of LA to go out to this, cabin in the woods with some friends and just kind of live in the forest, go on these hikes and just feel the rain on your skin. Cue Natasha Bedingfield. And I mean, you can tell, this song comes out like this song is something you would expect, along with one other one we're going to get to, that would come out of a sort of a Zen escapist songwriting retreat. And then my other favorite is Heart of Gold, which is one of the other, I could see this being a single. Apparently, it's about a childhood friend of Shawn's who died in 2018 from a drug overdose. I didn't cry, I didn't even feel the pain, and then it hit me all at once when we talked about you yesterday. When we were young, we didn't care. We shot for the stars. I see you up there. It's a really touching sentiment with a captivating hook that really draws me in. Heavy, and That'll Be the Day is where the album starts to lose me a little bit. I think at this point, sonically, we start to become a little bit more, the melodies start to become a little less intriguing. The song is about struggling with mental health, loneliness, and the process of opening up to others, which alludes to, how seeking support is something that's so important. You don't have to suffer in silence. You don't have to be alone. You've been rock steady trying to help me through. Now I'm finally ready to let you. In between, one of the sparser songs on the record does interpolate Isn't That Enough, which is probably the standout moment for me. The Mountain, I think, is, perhaps I want a little more from the melody, but this song is clearly one of the most personal on the record. It's one of the most honest and vulnerable. I took a trip to the mountains. I took a trip to the sea. I took a sip from the fountain. I took a pill to be free. And you can say it was drugs. You can say it was God. You can say it was aliens. You can say I've lost the plot. You can say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. You can say I'm far too gone, but I saw something out there, so call it what you want. And then in verse 2, I spent a week in the jungle, swore I came out a new man. Back to LA, I was humbled. Turns out I don't understand. And then the juiciest lines, you can say I'm too young. You can say I'm too old. You can say I like girls or boys, whatever fits your mold. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit of a discussion, and I don't want to spend too long harping on this, but I do think it's something we got to talk about. We're going to be talking about Shawn Mendes. When Shawn premiered this song a couple weeks ago, he opened up by admitting that this was a very personal song that was going to touch on a very personal topic, one that there has been speculation about for him throughout his entire career, alluding to his sexuality. So I'm going to read what he said. This is what he said on stage. The truth is that I didn't get to do a lot of 15-year-old things and discover parts of myself that you do at 15. There's this thing about my sexuality, and people have been talking about it for so long. He says he thinks the speculation is kind of silly, and I think he thinks sexuality is such a beautifully complex thing, and it's so hard to just put into boxes. It always felt like such an intrusion on something very personal to me. Something that I was figuring out in myself, something that I had yet to discover, and still have yet to discover it. The real truth about my life and my sexuality is that, man, I'm just figuring it out like everyone. And it feels really scary because we live in a society that has a lot to say about that. And I'm trying to be really brave and just allow myself to be a human and feel things. And that's all I really want to say about that for now. Okay, so when I saw this, this is where I have to, put a little bit of a warning for Shawn Mendes stans who may come across this video. Your faves are not immune from critique, okay? Your faves are not immune from critique, and I don't envy being in the position. Well, I do envy being famous for certain reasons, but obviously I acknowledge that if you are super famous, and if you also got famous really young, as a teenager, that there are particular minefields that are hard to navigate in terms of figuring out yourself in the public eye and people having expectations thrust upon you. And the speculation, the rumor mill, the media, it's a mess, and it is a problem for a lot of young talent, in whatever field they might be in that's putting them in this kind of spotlight with a devoted fan base. But, he is a public figure. I'm going to start out by saying that, he wanted to become, and I think most musicians want to become well known. They want to be able to live off of their work and be able to, have people come to their shows and not have to worry about selling records because they make so much money just on royalties and ad revenue and Shawn's been in movies. He's done voice acting. He's done pretty well for himself. He's become a rock star. And, we talk about this with Chappell Roan as well. It's sometimes a little bit like, oh gosh, it's really hard to hear people who seemingly are getting everything they could want complain about it from our perspective, from the perspective of the average person, the struggling artist who is trying to make it in a field that, is all about having people view you. It's all about putting yourself on display. If I want my art to be seen, I need to put it out into the world. And I also have to understand that the more people that see it, the more people are going to talk about it. And maybe whatever I put in it is going to reflect on how they view me. And so in some ways, there is no such thing as being fully private when you are a performing artist. And that goes for any of those fields, musician, particularly a musician, a visual artist. If you're an actor, I think you can sort of obfuscate a little more because you're usually following a script that you didn't write yourself. But if you're, self-writing your own music and, creating your own art, you want it to be reflective of who you are. You want it to be authentic to some of your experience. Maybe you're hiding certain things, but so I get really tired about sometimes artists in the public eye being like, I wish people would respect my privacy. And it's like, there is a line, and we need to recognize that people do cross it all the time. I mean, I'm not disavow, like, I'm acknowledging that, like, Chappell Roan has had to deal with stalkers. That's a very serious problem. Almost every musician I look up to has had to deal with stalkers. Unfortunately, stalkers are a real problem. And I don't know what the real fix for that is going to be, if there is like a blanket fix for that, besides just having more security. It's a real issue. But, when we're talking about people typing things on the internet, when we're talking about, people saying things and writing things in magazines and, you have to kind of step back a little bit. And I think some celebrities recognize this and others are coming to recognize this, that you can't read everything that people are saying about you. And of course, obviously they're not, but you can't really, you have to put a wall up. You have to put a wall up. And you have to recognize that they will only know for sure what you want them to know. But there is always going to be speculation. And if you choose to not explain certain things, you cannot be mad that people are going to speculate about it. Because if you choose to be kind of wishy-washy on it and you choose to sort of obfuscate, you can't stop people from kind of wondering, like, what's the real story? And so Shawn has been for years very defensive whenever any like journalist approaches him talking about it. He's like, to be honest with you, I just find it kind of really like upsetting and it's hard. It's felt like this kind of pressure. He said in a 2018 interview that he felt like he was sort of pressured to be seen with a girl because, if he wasn't seen with a girl frequently enough, people were going to assume things. And he's talked about it quite a lot. And honestly, I got to be honest with you, I think he brings up the conversation a lot more than he needs to. I'm going to be real. I am a gay man, if I didn't make that clear, if my voice didn't make that clear. So all of my commentary on this is coming from the perspective of a gay man who is only 4 years older than him or 5 years older than him, who, I mean, it's somewhat my experience as well. So I'm kind of trying to just like relate, but also I feel like I'm qualified to speak on it a little bit more than, some non-LGBT people might be. As a queer person, as a gay man, seeing the way Shawn talks, the way Shawn sort of bristles against speculation about his sexuality, at the beginning, I was just kind of upset by it because it really did make me think, God, I really hope he's not actually queer. Because if he is, the self-loathing is so sad that especially, I would say post 2019, especially when he sort of hit the high of his career, but also just in the last 5 years, and definitely in the last 10, where we have seen queer visibility like explode. We've gotten so many more artists who are not going through a closet phase anymore. I mean, they're coming right into the spotlight, not in the closet, which is awesome. I mean, this is what we want. And so look, politically, especially if we're, at the end of the day, Shawn is a cisgender, masculine presenting gay man. So if we're looking at if we're talking about how the world can still be a very dangerous place for queer people, are we really talking about people like Shawn Mendes? Or are we talking more about transgender people of color? So I would definitely push back a little bit in saying like, well, it's a really dangerous time to come out. It's like, for Shawn, though, is it really that dangerous of a time for Shawn to come out? The Trump campaign is openly embracing, cisgender gay men. They want their support. The Republicans are courting that vote. And we see a lot of gay, white men and black men, even other races, proudly supporting, the Republicans. I think we're at a place now where we have to acknowledge that in the West, coming out is not as dangerous as it was 10 or 15 years ago. And I mean, obviously, I never thought it would be that dangerous for him, but like, if we're also talking about commerciality, we're talking about, his bottom line. I have always believed that it would actually help Sean's career if he were to come out. I don't think Sean has and has had ever really that much of a straight male audience. I think his audience has always largely consisted of straight girls and some gay men. I'm gonna be real. Like, I mean, I don't think Sean would like to acknowledge it, but I don't really think he has a lot of casual straight male listenership. Um, I mean, he's sort of lumped in with the One Direction boys, the pop star kind of only famous because of, girls putting posters of him on his wall. The straight men aren't really messing with Sean. Like, they don't, like, not in the same way that, like, I don't know. I mean, this is how it looks, okay? So I don't really think Sean has anything really to lose in terms of commerciality if he were to come out. That being said, I don't know what his family life is like. I don't know how conservative his family is. I also don't know how religious he is. Don't think he's deeply religious. But I don't think those are factors here. I mean, this is what I'm gathering. Assuming someone assuming someone is straight until they tell you otherwise has always been the sort of de facto kind of way in which a lot of pop stars, particularly ones who present more masculine, like for example Ricky Martin, it's always been like straight until proven otherwise. That's always been sort of the, in the past, the sort of the golden rule. And I want to challenge that, and I think Shawn does too, but the wording he's giving is a little dubious. And so there's one particular part of this statement that I really kind of side eye, and I don't believe Shawn did it on purpose. I just don't think he's media trained in this at all. And I don't think that Shawn is very good at talking about queer identity because I don't really think he's done, based on what he said, I don't really think he's done a lot of research into it beyond his own personal experiences. Because it's coming across like he hasn't really explored the community. Because what really bugged me about this statement was the real truth about my life and my sexuality is that, man, I'm just figuring it out like everyone. And it feels really scary because we live in a society that has a lot to say about that. When he implies that we live in a very scary society today for people exploring their gender identity and their sexuality, I can't help but just think, have you looked at history? Do you hear yourself? You think that it is a scarier time today to be queer than it was 15, 20, 30, 100 years ago? What I almost kind of get underneath the subtext of this statement is that Shawn wishes that we were back in an age where queer identity and sexuality was something that was never shown to be like a part of your persona. And that people didn't really speak about it or question it because it was so unspeakable to imagine. How could he be gay? I mean, gay people don't look like that. Gay people would, it's obvious that they're gay. There was a real, up until not that long ago, there was this, especially among the straights, I mean, almost exclusively among straight people, there was this illusion that, gay people always presented a certain way, sounded a certain way, that there were tells that you could easily find out if they were gay based on their presentation. If one were to find out that someone was actually gay and they didn't fit the mold of a stereotypical gay presenting person, meaning they weren't in what is called the glass closet, meaning you can't really hide. It's so hard to hide that you are effeminate that it's sort of like your existence is kind of a giveaway. For the more masculine gay men, they were told to bury those feelings and hide and be as, discreet as possible to avoid being, exposed in a broader sense. If anyone were to find out and they themselves were very much, trying to hide any potential giveaway that they slept with men or were interested in men. And the same went for women. I mean, and lesbians, it was very much, don't ask, don't tell. And presume you are straight unless, God help you, if you are so effeminate that it's really hard to hide it, then good luck to you. I don't know how they did it back then. Whew, if you were a more effeminate gay man back in the 1950s, I don't know how you managed, because at least the masculine ones, it was like they could hide it. But if I existed back then with this voice, I don't know. I would have had gone through vocal training. They went through vocal training. They would train themselves to like lower their voice. I mean, it was like you just didn't want to have a whiff of gay on you. When Shawn says things like, we live in a society now where it's really scary because I'm just figuring things out, but people are wanting me to come out and people are wanting me to be this and wanting me to be that. I just think scary, and the way it was just a really poor word choice, because he could not be in a more safe environment throughout history to come out if he truly is queer. And it is kind of a slap in the face to queer artists today, because it kind of gives like, why y'all flaunt your sexuality in public like that? Like, I'm not like those people. And if he is gay, I'm not like those gays. That whole like, I'm not, the sex shaming. I mean, like, that's another discourse. That's another thing. I see both sides of certain arguments there, but getting away with myself here. I got to make sure I stay on track. I just look, I really feel for Shawn. I think that Shawn is, I mean, based on this statement, I was pretty certain that he was straight up until this statement. Because I do kind of feel like at a certain point, if you truly are straight, you just let it go. Why, even if he doesn't like that people are speculating that he is, and he doesn't want to necessarily, I mean, to my knowledge, I don't know if Shawn has ever outright like come out and said, I am straight, at least not in the last 6 years. But I don't think that he needs to do that. I agree that he doesn't necessarily need to do that, but then he opens up the conversation and he decides to put out a song that says, and then in the lyric, it says, you can say I like girls or boys, whatever fits your mold. How do we interpret that? As queer people, as queer fans of Shawn Mendes, how do we interpret that? What does that say about how you view sexuality? I have some hot takes, and some Shawn Mendes fans will get really mad at me. Shawn knows who he is. He's 26 years old. Okay? If you are bisexual, there are tells going all the way back through into your early teenage years, possibly even earlier than that. I think that, I mean, obviously we know that Shawn cannot, I mean, people think that Taylor Swift is a full-blown lesbian, so there's obviously conspiracy theorists aboard on the internet. But, there are a lot of gay fans of Shawn's who want Shawn to be 100% gay. As much as I also said I thought Shawn was 100% straight, I also knew he was not 100% gay. Because if Shawn has been dating women all this time and forcing himself to be in heterosexual relationships purely because of PR or because of self-loathing homophobia, that is really sad. But, to be fair, there is evidence of that not long ago happening. Look at Colton Underwood. Okay, he went on The Bachelor and dated 30 women as a gay man. But of course, at the time, he was not open about it to pretty much anyone and was kind of deeply trying to repress that part of himself. But he wasn't even bisexual. He came out as gay a couple of years later. And I was kind of shook by that, because I was like, how can a man who is not at least bisexual go through that process? But Colton talked about it. It's complicated. You form these emotional connections, and he grew up in a very religious kind of background, and it was like, he was in football and a very masculine and kind of environment that made it feel like there was no chance he could, possibly be anything but a heterosexual male football star. And, Shawn Mendes definitely, growing up as a male pop star, there is definitely like a machismo there, but Shawn Mendes is not an athlete. Okay. He is not in a field that is completely, isn't queer friendly to at least a certain degree. And especially today, and post Colton Underwood, I really hope that we see a lot less of that. Like that was what I was hoping that Colton's kind of coming out would signal, is that we would start seeing masculine gay men not go through their entire 20s pretending they were something they weren't and stringing women along like it's the 19 frickin' 50s. Like it's 2024, it's almost 2025. I really, really hope that Shawn is not living in that kind of prison, because it is such a, I mean, no wonder he might have had a mental health breakdown a couple years ago. If that's what he's dealing with, and he's been stringing Camila Cabello along and Sabrina Carpenter. So no, this man is obviously attracted to women. Okay, I think we can all say that for sure. We just don't know if he, potentially is bisexual, and if he ever is going to openly come out as bisexual. Because I'll be damned if he comes out as a full-on gay man. I mean, I'll eat my words, but oh my God. I mean, you gotta at a certain point just be like, this is so freaking sad. This is really, really sad. I just don't, I'm sorry. I just side eye. I side eye because I don't think Shawn's in a position for like at least the last 5 years where him coming out would be controversial. I really hope that is not like at the end of the day where this is all about, But, at the end of the day, I think what Shawn did tell us with this statement is that he wants to keep up this illusion. He doesn't want to label himself, which means that, yes, now I'm sort of amending my speculation that he is 100% straight. Well, he might have tried things with boys and is figuring it out, seeing if he, I will say that obviously bisexuality is a spectrum, and people can be a little bit more leaning towards heterosexuality, but still have occasionally people that make them attracted to the same gender that come into their life. Which is why I think sometimes people can think like, oh, I was heterosexual until I met you, and that kind of thing. But the truth is that you were never heterosexual the whole time. If someone could make you sexually attracted to them, that was already there. They didn't implant that upon you. You may have been ignoring it. You might not have been listening to it. You might have been deluding yourself all throughout your teenage years and whatever, and saying, nope, don't want to hear it. I'm not gonna jack off to that. Nope, not gonna do it. That's possible, but like the signs are there. Okay, the signs are there. It doesn't just pop up one day. And it's like, oh yeah, I think I am sexually attracted to something I never thought I was sexually attracted to. So my heart goes out to Shawn. I hope that, honestly, I think it's probably for the best that he just doesn't address this until he possibly ever does fall in love with a boy and is ready to publicly come out and be like, because then you can't hide it, right? It's like if you have a boyfriend, no boyfriend's going to want to put up with that. Shawn, if you're going to go out with me, you need to acknowledge that we're going out. So, until, if ever, Shawn does find himself in love with a man, if it were to ever happen, I think, it's best that Shawn just kind of move forward, just pretend, I don't want to say pretending, but putting on an image of being heterosexual. Because I honestly feel like, I saw some people, and I think it was a little unfair. I saw some people attacking him saying, Shawn's only doing this for PR. This is the definition of queer baiting. And no, I don't think that's the case. I think that Shawn's been very low key with the promotion for this album. I think he wants to be a little bit more low key. I don't think he really wants to wade in and make huge splashes in the headlines. I think that's one of the reasons why he doesn't really like talking about his sexuality. But he is basically, I think, and what we can take from this going forward is that he wants to say he lives in this in this space where it's like I'm unlabeled, my sexuality is unlabeled, but you're only ever going to see me date women. Sorry, Shawn, I don't buy that. I'm going to call you heterosexual. Okay? Can we be okay with that? Are you going to be offended I call you heterosexual? Because you're choosing not to show us and confirm anything else. All we know is we've seen you date women. Okay? The allegations that you're homosexual come from stans who are attracted to you, and they see that you're not, that you can be in touch with your feminine side. He likes to wear you know, some high fashion, some haute couture. He's a well-styled gentleman, okay? He's got like a little bit more of a European flair to him. He's not like super gruff and masculine. And so I think that's led people to, the rumors will go. The rumors will go. Shawn, also I think Shawn needs to realize that he is not the only person who's going through this kind of speculation. And yet he seems to be the only like big male pop star who makes a big stink out of it. All the others just sort of like Harry Styles just kind of like is like love is love, like whatever. He doesn't act defensive. He doesn't be like, well, I don't like when people put this on me and then try and say I'm this and I feel pressured to be this and blah 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 blah. He just like lets his music kind of speak for itself. And I have my own issues with Harry Styles. I think Harry Styles definitely likes to do a little bit of the queer baiting. I think that's a heterosexual man who wants to be bisexual. Oh boy, I think Harry Styles wishes he was bisexual because he wants to be that really edgy David Bowie figure. But I definitely think he's tried. Let's just put it that way. Whereas I think Shawn's maybe a little more scared. But I think I don't know. I don't know. On the one hand, I'm like, if he really is straight, why won't he just say that? I really appreciate that. I think a lot of female musicians these days are just so candid and open. And I do want to because I know I'm like, this is a really long video. I'm sorry. This is kind of turning into like a video essay here, but I just needed to get my thoughts on this before I wrap up and talk about the last two songs on this record. I really do think that like sexuality and the speculation of it is still really more of an issue for male artists than it is for female artists. I mean, yes, female artists get a lot of speculation too. Taylor Swift has the Gaylors, the delusional Gaylors. What are we going to do about them? But I think at this point, like Taylor acknowledges and knows, and I think the Gaylors know that it's kind of harmless and silly. And it's just them kind of doing a fanfic. It's no different than fan fiction. They don't really think that Taylor is a lesbian. But I think they just want to live this fantasy that she is. And I don't really think Taylor's ever like directly come out and said that she's bothered by the Gaylors. Obviously, if privacy is invaded, that's one thing. But people writing fan fictions and saying what they want to say, it's like, you just got to roll with it. You're a public figure. I feel like women in the industry are just a lot more like okay with being like, oh yeah, I'm a part of the community. Or I'm not a part of the community. I'm an ally. And it's like, it's not as like, they don't make this sort of whole defense of like, I don't want to label myself. Because I feel like the whole I don't want to label myself thing, it comes across as like, I don't want to be with the homos. Like, I'm sorry. It comes across as you want your cake and you want to have it and eat it too. And it's like, Shawn, visibility is important. Do you think that there is something to like why these like gay fans of yours are like hoping that you're actually going to come out as gay? Because that's a huge visible icon that they will have, and that the last thing they want to see is you suffering in the closet, especially in the year of our Lord 2024. Like I just feel like Shawn's not thinking about anything but himself in this, and and again, it still comes across to me as sort of like, how dare you insinuate and put the stench of gay on me? That I need to distance myself from that. And now he's acknowledging that like, you can say what you want, whatever. I'm not going to confirm or deny at this time, but I'm good, which is a step in the right direction. But then he makes that added, he didn't need to say the last thing about how it's a scary time to be questioning your sexuality right now. It's like, Shawn, you're a very handsome, attractive, cisgender white man. You're going to be okay. Read the room. Read the room. Are you transgender? I don't think so. Are you a person of color? I don't think so. So, are you, are you a thin, attractive man? I'm sorry. I got to read people for their privilege. I got to do it. Someone's got to do it. So I spent way too long talking about this, but I'm just trying to articulate my thoughts because I just had so much I felt like I needed to say. And I wonder if anyone else is going to be like, thank you for saying this. Because I feel like I'm going to get a lot of people coming at me. And, look, I'm open to having a conversation about it, I'm not bisexual, so I can't speak to what being bisexual might look like. Um, you know, I there's definitely people who might be better qualified to talk about it. But as a queer person, I can kind of shed some light. And I just don't necessarily like the way Shawn kind of strings it along and kind of belittles being LGBT. It's not something to hide, and it should never be something you feel like you have to hide. Because one day you might want to be with a man, and you'll be writing songs about him using he pronouns, and you shouldn't want to hide that. And so, just acknowledge that, like, right now you're dating women, but you're open to dating a man because you've but he doesn't want to do that. I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell. Actions will speak louder than words. Okay? And maybe one day cameras will catch him with a guy. He will publicly be with a guy. And then we'll know. But, in Shawn Mendes' game, we're going to, pretend, we're going to assume that he is straight. That's what I'm going to do. Because I think it's just a little insulting to sort of have him be like, I want to dip my toe in to create kind of like this aura and mystique, but, at the same time say like, I don't want anything to do with that. And I wish y'all would shut up about it. So at the end of the day, I respect Shawn Mendes, but I really wish that he would just truly not talk about it. Just be a straight man. It's okay. It's okay, Shawn, if you're straight. It's okay to be straight. Anyway, okay, so, because otherwise, why are you so insecure about it? That makes me think that you are a self-loathing, closeted bisexual, or possibly homosexual, but like I said, let's hope that's really sad. And I'll eat my words if he really is, but I think he's been too, lovelorn with women to I don't see it. But anyway, rolling right along. Okay. Oh my God, I can't believe I went so off tangent here. Anyway, The Mountain. I do appreciate the illusion of spirituality. He's acknowledging that he's not sure what, he felt close to, but it was something higher than himself. And it's a very open-ended, kind of like open-minded song. And it's got like a comforting, kind of calming, outdoorsy vibe that is reminiscent of kind of what I expected from a project like this. And so rolling right along, is a little bit more up tempo. Coming out the other side, and like I feel like he is so much more at peace on the latter half of this record. I think it was sequenced that way, to be like The Mountain was like the climax of his last couple years of self-discovery, and now he's got all of this. He feels like a lot more sort of wizened, and he's reflecting on how he's been, how he will still make mistakes, but it's okay. Like I'm just a human, trying to get through this. And yeah, like I said, going back to that last conversation, it is different for everyone how they kind of come to terms with their own sexual identity. But usually, and hopefully now in the modern era, a lot of that's taken care of in the teenage years, not in your mid-20s, which it seems to be the case for Shawn. And so we end with the Leonard Cohen Hallelujah cover. And I will say, I mean, I've seen some reviewers kind of criticize it for being a little pastiche. I think that he brings a wonderful sentimentality to it, and I think he does some really interesting um, vocal maneuvers to try and kind of elevate the melody. And so I think it's a very beautiful and haunting rendition with this, choral moment coming in of his layered vocals, and it ends the album on a very lofty note. Overall, I'm impressed by this record. I wouldn't be reviewing it if I didn't think there was something worth talking about. I have never felt that way about a Shawn Mendes record before. So I do think that this is his strongest record yet. But is the bar kind of low? Maybe. Is this a phenomenal record? No. But there's one or two songs that I think are some great kind of folk pop, country leaning, easy listening, introspective melodies and songwriting. So I my hat goes off to Shawn for kind of he's not completely bucking the mold, because I do think that Noah Kahan and country in general is having a moment right now. So it's not like super left field for him to go in this lane. But I like that he went more folk than just traditional dude country, if you know what I mean. This is a little bit more. This is more Flatland Cavalry rather than Luke Bryan, and I appreciate that it's more like the former. So what are your thoughts on this record? And then what are your thoughts on my 30-minute tangent that I went on about I don't know. I hope I don't regret sharing all those thoughts, but I felt like I just needed to say how I felt. And I think a lot of queer people are going to have a lot of things to say, because at the end of the day, I really want us to get to a place where coming out is not a big deal. And I also really want us to get to a place where no one feels like they have to hide who they are. And that includes, more macho, masculine gay men. I think that, we're starting to see post Colton, that starting to correct itself. We're starting to see, masculinity and homosexuality not be so like oil and water. And of course, the battleground has now moved towards transgender and a lot more kind of progressive movements around gender. And so, as with most things, the people who are closest to the patriarchy get the benefits of absolving into it first. And so the white gay men, and particularly the thin ones, are at the top of the food chain, and they're not doing too bad right now. They're in a good spot. Shawn could come out and he would be in a perfectly good spot. I don't think it would be a problem at all. In the West, obviously, this is a very Western-centric conversation. But it's not like that for other people under the LGBTQ umbrella. So I really hope that Shawn can find, his person. And like I said, just at this point, don't mention sexuality anymore unless you're ready to fully say something. Because it definitely is, it's a bit of you're saying a lot without, and actually kind of just making it worse. So I don't think he sees it that way. And I'm not saying I don't think he shouldn't have mentioned anything, but I don't think that his statement, I think if he had just said look, I love that we are in a space where people really want to celebrate the LGBT community. And I am very happy to be, able to be in a place where I can explore my own sexuality without having to label it. If it had come from a place of I'm really grateful that I'm in a place today where instead of condescendingly talking down to his fans and saying, I wish you'd shut up about this. That's what I'm saying. You're telling your queer fans that it's insulting that they would want you to be like them. And at the end of the day, that don't feel too good. That doesn't feel too good. Let me know your thoughts. I hope you all enjoyed this review. Please leave us a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you are new. I'll see you all in my next video. Peace, love, and light. Bye.